And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Monday, September 21st. I'm Gary Stevens. Thanks to Beck McNichols subbing for me on Friday. That's going to be the case for the next few Fridays, as I'll be taking mornings off on Fridays, getting ready for high school football on Friday nights. So I'm going to be fresher, and we do have good people in both Peg McNichol and Chris Allen subbing for me, and of course Scott Watson a little bit later on in October. Hopefully all be well with Scott. But today I'm with you, better for worse, whatever. We're together, and we're with you until 11 o'clock, 11:30 this morning. We will have Patty Vandenberg, What's New Around Howland, in about an hour, as well, and the next hour with State Senator Roger Victory of Hudsonville. And we'll have some open line following the 10 and 11 o'clock news. But on this third Monday of the month, we spend our first half hour with one of the two men who represent the Lake Shore in the state Senate. He is first-term Republican Aric Nesbitt of Lawton. He's on the other side of our Zoom connection. Aric, good morning, and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me. I think everything sounds good this time.
Yep,
right?
It does. It does.
Looks like you got a haircut, too.
No, I didn't yet.
No?
I do need one. I also threatened maybe I need to shave my goatee. My wife says, well, you can if you want to, but I wouldn't like it. So the boss says I keep it.
It's always best that way.
By the way, I don't want to start spreading things that are a little bit out of maybe not in the public realm, but through your Instagram, nice little post. Did some mowing of the grape
Yeah, it's grape season. Harvest on some of the wine grapes have started, but I think Niagara's are starting today for Welch's. As you know, if you're down in the Lawton Pawpaw area, there's grapes everywhere, and our family has some vineyards, and so I think I brush chopped probably 16 acres worth over the weekend. So it was nice to just throw on a book on tape, not to respond to text or anything, and just go out and mow the grapes. And so did a little brush chopping this weekend. So that was nice.
And it's nice to have the little kitty cat back too. I'm a cat person. I like cats, so yeah, I saw that and I said,
Growing up on a farm, we always, animals are supposed to be outside, but it's amazing what marriage does. And my wonderful wife came with 2 cats, and so we have 2 cats, and my daughter, 16 months old now, just loves them. So I think she's still kind of between gentle pets and terrorizing them. So she goes back and forth, it seems like.
Well, the cats, I think, shall we say, they just tolerate the little ones there. But hey, they're cats and babies, they're cute. Hey, we'll take it. If you got a question for Aric Nesbitt, the state senator, and we will talk some meaty stuff, he'll take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I saved this story from a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it was pretty much last week. You are a member of the Joint Select Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic, and let's just say it was an interesting session. One of the members was accusing the chair of badgering the State Department of Health and Human Services Director Robert Gordon as to why an appropriation for personal protection equipment and not responding to requests for documents. And, it was just, let's just say it was a Michigan state government in action.
Well, it's something where Director Gordon's head of the largest department in the state, Health and Human Services. They have about a $26 billion budget. They oversee, he was the main point person along with Dr. Khaldun in terms of the response on this. And we finally got him before the committee. And this was on the Nursing Home Task Force report. But the challenge is that we've been asking for data. We've been asking for the science underpinning all these decisions from the governor for months now. And they will not deliver them. They will not share them with us. They will not share, why what's open is open, what's closed is closed. Everything is apparently in a secret box. And I think that the legislature and the people in Michigan, our families in Michigan, really, need to see what's going on in their decision making. process. But this was on nursing homes, specifically. And this is something where Executive Order 50, going back to earlier this spring, specifically said that nursing homes had to accept COVID positive patients as they returned out of the hospital into nursing homes next to patients with COVID negative patients. And they will not take responsibility for this. This is a horrible policy decision. We've been trying to fight back on it for months. We passed legislation to end this practice. The governor vetoed it. She created a task force back in the middle of July. The task force report came back a few weeks ago. It said that they should stop doing this. Her own task force report said. And then we got from the Health and Human Services Director, this is Governor Whitmer's appointee, that they actually requested a report at the same time that the task force was created to defend their position on nursing homes and trying to compare us to other states and saying that because we have a higher overall death rate in the state of Michigan, that they actually did better than some of the other states. And when I tried to ask, well, what did Wisconsin do? What did Ohio do? What did South Dakota do? States that did much better than us in terms of lower death rate, lower nursing home deaths. He says, you can't compare us to other states. And so it was just a very frustrating hearing from the top director for Health and Human Services in the state of Michigan under Governor Whitmer, and he was just using word semantics and dodging all the questions as they refused to deliver data to the legislature.
Yeah, that's been the biggest bone of contention. What I've seen from this is the fact that, yes, it is one thing to have a leader lead and should be upfront, but it's also a case of, let us know what's going on too, and not just say, trust me, trust me, trust me. I'm sorry. That might work in certain aspects. We have to trust our Lord and Savior, but let's put it this way, not in government.
Well, and this reminds me of the old saying that power corrupts. We know that. And so that's why we have vertical separation of powers and horizontal separations of power, why you have the legislature, judicial, and executive branch, why you have a federalist form of government here in the United States. You have the federal government, state governments, and local governments, because you want to have a division of power. But since she used this Emergency Management Act for the governor since early this spring, she's had absolute power over the state government, every level of state government. And as part of our process, is I feel it's important that we go over what every part of government was actually doing, as we didn't have a direct say as in the legislature. It's our responsibility. It's incumbent upon us to do this. And we continue to hear word games. We continue to hear things from, example from the Unemployment Insurance Agency, where they were never given a heads up for the 1.7 million people that ended up being laid off from the governor's economic suppression. But more specifically, last week, the overview of the nursing home policy is the Whitmer administration's policy that placed coronavirus-infected patients into nursing homes with non-COVID patients, and they have been defending that policy for months. But keep in mind, numerous legislative Democrats voted for a resolution that included the governor's policy of placing COVID patients in nursing homes. They actually opposed her. And so the bipartisan side is saying, stop doing it. And I think we saw last week, as I said, the director was just playing word games. I think the task force, the governor's own nursing home task force, stepped in, recommended many improvements to the governor's policy. It's a shame that it's taken so long for a task force to be formed. And I'm just hopeful that this administration reverse course and start taking smart, common sense actions. Actually, it was asked by Senator Lasada out of Berrien County that asked him why it took so long to form the nursing home task force. And Director Gordon says, we were busy. That's it. The most vulnerable population that we have in terms of coronavirus, in terms of COVID positive folks, older people with underlying health conditions. And then we know those that are overweight and vitamin D deficiencies. Those are the leading, the leading causes, underlying causes of death from COVID-19. And yet they said that they were too busy to try to get a better in-depth understanding of our most vulnerable population. The governor has claimed all along that her decisions are based on science and data. And so the information I think we are requesting in terms of what science and data she's using should be readily available. And it's not. It's not available to the public. It's not available to the legislature. We're just wondering why, why on April 26th, that she can say on May 1st, I'm going to announce the opening of construction on May 7th. What science and data led to that conclusion? What science and data has led that's saying that casinos could open at the beginning of August, private casinos? Now, tribal casinos have been open since the beginning of June. There's a dual sovereignty thing, but private casinos could open the beginning of August. But a little arcade down in South Haven, Michigan, is forced to remain closed.
It's a little unusual there. Good morning. You're on the line with State Senator Aric Nesbitt.
Can you repeat
He brings
that?
me back to several years ago when the Flint water crisis was going on. And, Snyder was killing all these people, and he got the heat for that and for something that I think came from the previous administration, which happened to be Democrat. And now this is blatant murder, as far as I'm concerned. Putting COVID patients with most vulnerable people is criminal. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much, Aric. I assume you heard the rest of it.
Yeah, I heard it. I mean, we do go through challenges, and executives have to make decisions, and I get that. And I think the first few weeks when we didn't know as much as we know now, that there was a lot of confusion, and we've seen that in this administration. There was a lot of confusion. There was disarray. I think people are willing to give some mercy and grace during that period. But months and months later, and not changing course and accepting a devastating policy, that is wrong. And I think that course needs to be corrected. The legislature has been pushing it. She's vetoed that legislation. And so we're going to continue, demanding answers for this. And I think the people, as you look at it, the people need to hold the governor accountable.
Don't get me started about the Flint water crisis. I've said before, a few years ago when it did happen, having worked in the Flint market before coming here to to the Tri-City, in the Tri-Cities, before coming here to Holland, about some of the graft and corruption in Flint city government that led to the appointing of the emergency manager, and then the Detroit water system jacking up rates because they had a monopoly, forcing the manager to have to go to local water when the pipes were not ready for it. Don't get me started about Flint and that whole situation, because you're right, that one goes back into the 1990s in that regard.
Yeah, and this is the challenge that I think media has to give context a bit more of these stories in terms of what's actually out there, instead of just being driven by clickbait headlines. And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah. Let's get to the phones. Good morning. You're on the line with State Senator Aric Nesbitt.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I was wondering, how is the governor dodging all these lawsuits that have been coming at her, and all this? Seems like she just has a shield around her, or nobody take it to a certain point and drop it. What's happening here? How does she have this magic power? How can we take care of that?
Yeah, so there's it's a good question. When we tried, the first, I'd say, 6 weeks of this pandemic, we really tried to find an agreement with the governor and try to figure this and try to be on the same page. And she says, nope, I'm going to go it alone, period, paragraph. And she instituted this 1945 law, which, according to the governor, gives her broad, unlimited authority when she declares an emergency, and has no end date, has no end time. And she's been using that to say, by ruling by executive order. I think there's over 180 executive orders now, 3 times more than any other state surrounding us in terms of the number of dictates she's putting down, the micromanagement of our economy, the micromanagement of all levels of our state and personal lives. And so that's why in May, the legislature filed a lawsuit against the governor saying, No, I don't think our founders or past legislatures say that just because the governor says it's an emergency, you should be giving, emergency legislative fiat to one person for an unlimited amount of time. And actually, the 76 law, which actually mentions pandemics, actually says that every 28 days they should go to the legislature and get authorization on that emergency declaration. And so then that'd be a negotiated, settlement, and the legislature saying, this is what we need to know in terms of the science and data of what should be closed, what should be open, how do we get through this. So far, it's been a split decision at the lower courts and then at the Court of Appeals, and now it's at the Supreme Court. And so they've been, I think the courts have been slow walking this decision-making process because it's a disagreement between the executive branch and the legislative branch, which is very disappointing. Their job is to make decisions. Their job is to break down those decisions and help figure out these balance of power issues. But in the meantime, the people seem to have want to make a change, because there was a grassroots movement back in July that started called Unlock Michigan, which repeals the 1945 law, which then would depend on the 1976 law, which would say every 28 days the legislature can extend that time of emergency to the governor, and the legislature and the executive should work together. There has been no ballot proposal, no initiated legislation, nothing done by petition that have gotten so many signatures in such a quick period of time. And so there are just about 500,000 signatures that have been signed and gathered around the state by citizens. And this initiated legislation, when certified by the Secretary of State, and believe me, they're going to nitpick this as they protect the governor's power at all costs. That is when it's certified, then the House and Senate with a simple majority vote can remove those 1945 law, and then it's dependent on 1976 law, or the local health departments can utilize their power under the public health code to implement it, to make it regional and make it, and be able to respond to what's actually happening locally.
Aric, one more thing I want to bring up to you before we button up this discussion, and I know it's going to sound, from your point of view, it's going to be sounding like, well, we're legislators. This involves us. But I'm not surprised by this, according to MERS News. The State Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission held another marathon meeting last Friday as it heard some more presentations and took up some initial votes to set up its structure. After deliberating on whether to elect a chair and vice chair for a 3-month period or a 6-month period, the ICRC opted for a 6-month term and reelected as acting chair Steve Lett. As to chair, Brittany Kellum was elected to the vice chair. I had a funny feeling that this was not going to go well in terms of this effort by voters, not politicians, to change the redistricting guidelines. Instead of having it by lawmakers, have it by this quote-unquote independent body.
Yeah, I think you're going to see the same challenges we've seen in California, where we see very odd-looking gerrymandered districts. I'm hopeful. I mean, this is the first time, and the voters did vote on it. You're right, I was opposed to it in 18, but I sure hope that I thought we had a pretty good standard that we had to follow, which was compact districts, that they had to be equal in terms of their representation, that they had to limit the number of county breaks, then city breaks, and then township breaks in that order. This commission will see, but I'm usually it's usually a little challenging when you try to take the politics out of politics. And I don't think you'll see that necessarily happening. They're using something called communities of interest, which is not defined at all. What does that necessarily mean? Does that, I could see a communities of interest being lakeshore communities, and all of a sudden you have a Senate seat that's from New Buffalo all the way up to Ludington. I don't know. And the other concern I have is that there's nobody from West Michigan. Nobody. Out of the 13 members that were picked, nobody from Kalamazoo, Ottawa, Kent County, Southwest Michigan. The closest you get is somebody up near Traverse City, and then
then
somebody
also in Battle Creek.
and somebody out in Battle Creek, but nobody within really the 2-county wide from the lakeshore. And so this is the challenge that we have with all these statewide positions, is that you usually have, I call it this triangle of power between East Lansing, Ann Arbor, and Detroit. And it seems like everybody's kind of usually within that segment, compared to the legislative structure, where you have people from every corner of the state.
Yeah.
Every citizen has somebody represented from every county.
All right. Wish we had more time, Aric. As always, thank you very much. And if all goes well, let's do this again next month. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Gary. God bless you.
Thank you very much. That's Aric Nesbitt, State Senator, on WHTC's Talk of the Town. CBS News, top of the hour, Patrick Nickel with WHTC News, and more of Talk of the Town with Open Line after the news break.